debris.
Donald, you're probably the best known builder, particularly of great buildings in the city. There's a great deal of question about whether or not the damage and the ultimate destruction of the buildings was caused by the airplanes, by architectural defect, or possibly by bombs or aftershocks. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, it was an architectural defect. You know, the World Trade Center was always known as a very, very strong building. Don't forget, that took a big bomb in the basement. Now, the basement is the most vulnerable place because that's your foundation. And it withstood that. And I got to see that area about 3 or 4 days after it took place because one of my structural engineers actually took me for a tour because he did the building. And I said, I can't believe it. The building was standing solid and half of the columns were blown out. I mean, so this was an unbelievably powerful building. If you know anything about structure, it was one of the first buildings that was built from the outside. The steel, the reason the World Trade Center had such narrow windows is that in between all the windows you had the steel on the outside. So you had the steel on the outside of the building. That's why when I first looked, and you had big, heavy I-beams, when I first looked at it, I couldn't believe it because there was a hole in the steel. And this is steel that was, you remember the width of the windows in the World Trade Center, folks. I think you know, if you were ever up there, they were quite narrow. And in between was this heavy steel. I said, how could a plane, even a 767 or 747, or whatever it might have been, how could it possibly go through the steel? I happen to think that they had not only a plane, but they had bombs that exploded almost simultaneously, because I just can't imagine anything being able to go through that wall. Most buildings are built with the steel is on the inside around the elevator shaft. This one was built from the outside, which is the strongest structure you can have, and it was almost just like a can of soup.
You know, Donald, we were looking at pictures all morning long of that plane coming into building number 2, and when you see that approach the far side, and then all of a sudden, within a matter of a millisecond, the explosion pops out the other side.
Right. I just think that it was a plane with more than just fuel. I think, obviously, they were very big planes. They were going very rapidly because I was also watching where the plane seemed to be not only going fast, it seemed to be coming down.
The new World Trade Center, Building 7, looms above the site of its original. Building 7 was a 47-story high-rise, not hit by an airplane. Yet, it was the third modern steel-frame skyscraper to collapse rapidly and symmetrically on 9/11. It was a football field away from the North Tower and sustained minor damage from falling debris. Building 7's precipitous collapse was blamed on normal office fires.
I'm Steve Barish, founder and president of Barish Architects and Associates, Inc., a 33-year-old architecture planning and engineering firm. One of the things that really interested me is how quickly the Tower 7 fell. It fell within 7 seconds approximately from top to bottom. This building was built in the mid-'80s and met all the codes at the time.
From about 1965 until about 1985, most of my experience has been in high-rise, multi-story steel buildings. NIST would have us to believe that these was a typical office fire, scattered office fires, if you will, that brought this building down. Since the mid-'60s, I've tried to follow high-rise fires because they're something we worry a lot about as we design these buildings. And I'm not aware of any high-rise building that have come down as a result of fires.
I first became aware of the problems with the official account of the collapse when I saw a DVD online from Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. They pointed out various problems with the official story, and the ones that caught my attention were the rapid failure of the connections in order for the building to come down at the rate that it did.
I've been involved in many large projects, including overseeing several high-rise buildings ranging in size from 14 stories to 40. Over the course of 20 years, I'm mainly called in to help with very large, difficult projects. When I watched Building 7 collapse, it basically left no doubt in my mind that something was wrong. Building 7 had not been hit by a plane.
The coup de grace for me was when I found out that Building 7 had collapsed later that day. And when I saw Building 7 come down, to me, the fact that it looks like a perfect controlled demolition of an intact building. I mean, that's what I call a smoking gun.
I heard, I saw the plane, and then I turned and looked up. I can't believe it. That was a suicide. That's intentional. That's got to be intentional.
I thought it was like a fighter plane going over, and then I heard the bang.
Yeah.
I thought we don't get fighter planes in New York.
It was so low. I
It was so low.
Yeah.
That's a bit low.
Sure does not.
Loco! A plane crash! Look! Look! Oh shit! Look! That's just hot, man. Fuck the world, man. Fuck the world. There you go.
And ran out here. So I've been shooting footage coming all the way down there until I got here. No, because everybody this close couldn't see it. And I was up there and I saw the fucking thing come in.
First one impacted there?
First one was here coming from downtown.
You saw it impact?
No, I didn't. But I was standing there and I saw the second one come from Newark direction. And it just went straight to the back of the building and the explosion came out uptown.
Yeah, when I got the subway out, yeah.
Huh? It came from back, yeah. See, Harley? It's from the bottom.
It's called Building 6. It was a 10-story building. It's a 500,000 square feet. That's a lot. It's missing the interior of the building. It's not crushed. It's not in the basement or something like that. It's actually missing. It's like somebody scooped it out. Now, think about this building. It's missing its core. That's your smoking gun. You don't need nothing else. Nobody's going to be able to argue with this. They can't say, oh, there's a nuke went off in that building, because the core of the building is actually missing, but the exterior is intact. They're not going to be able to get away with saying, oh, it's just crushed or it's gone into the basement, because it's not in the basement and it never got crushed. Everybody knows this. It's missing. Everybody ignored it. And it's not going to be ignored no more. This is something that you have to push out there. You have to do that. It's the... there it is. That's the inside of Building 6. The walls are intact, the basement is intact, and nobody has a friggin' clue what could do this. I wonder what's going through his head. There's no desks, there's no chairs, no office furniture, there's no bathrooms. Everything is rusted, everything is hanging symmetrically straight down, and the floor is intact. Does it look like any big chunks of metal came down here and smashed all this in? What smashed all this in? If it got smashed in, nothing, say, or you would see it here right now. The basement's intact, the walls are intact. You know, I can't explain it. It's not a nuclear explosion. It's not nanothermite that done something like that. It's not an air blast over it or some kind of obvious thing. There's people everywhere. Nobody knows what happened to this. It's a big friggin' mystery. And it's certainly not explosives. It's certainly not some kind of incendiary devices. It's not some kind of kinetic energy devices. Even though you see how everything is hanging, but it's not kinetically smacked apart and blown apart. Everything is symmetrical. It's just totally missing. That's where one of the towers kind of almost spilled over, and people said that's what crushed the inside of it. But now we finally see that that certainly wasn't a factor. Nobody knows what happened here. There it is. That's the inside of Building 6. The walls are intact, the basement is intact, and nobody has a friggin' clue what could do this.